50. The Civil Revolution, Part 8. In a study of major importance, historian Edmund S. Morgan deals with the fiction behind modern civil governments. His purpose is not to challenge the civil authorities, and he is sincerely troubled by the pejorative connotation attached to the word fiction. But I have been unable to find a better one to describe the different phenomena to which I have applied it. Morgan writes as a scholar investigating the subject, not as a reformer. The many are governed by the few because the many believe that the order prescribed and or ruled by the few is the right and just order. When Morgan writes about the fiction or the make-believe behind civil governments, he is discussing the religious faith, whatever it may be, which undergirds authority and rule. Not surprisingly, Morgan's book begins with the following quotation from David Hume's Of the First Principles of Government, Essays and Treatises on Several Subjects, 1758 edition. Nothing is more surprising to those who consider human affairs with a philosophical eye than to see the easiness with which the many are governed by the few, and to observe the implicit submission with which men resign their own sentiments and passions to those of their rulers. When we inquire by what means this wonder is brought about, we shall find that, as force is always on the side of the governed, the governors have nothing to support them but opinion. 'Tis therefore on opinion only that government is founded, and this maxim extends to the most despotic and most military governments, as well as to the most free and popular. Hume assumed something against common opinion in saying that force is on the side of the ruled. In sheer numbers, they far outweigh their rulers, who cannot enforce anything except with soldiers and officers from the people. Hume concluded, "'Tis on opinion only that government is founded." Like Morgan and his use of the word fiction, Hume meant faith by the word opinion. For Hume, religion was at best only opinion and, more often, only opinion. Hume is popular with liberals who are sufficiently well-read to know him, because he doubted everything and believed in nothing. Nothing was knowable or believable in his world. At the same time, Hume is popular with humanistic conservatives because Hume was a, quote, conservative, end quote. Since, for Hume, nothing was rational, knowable, or believable, nothing was worth changing or dying for. But to return to Morgan's thesis, contemporary doctrines of popular sovereignty are modern versions of the belief in the divine right of kings. Kantorowicz demonstrated that the theory of the monarchy was borrowed from the church and from Christology, only to be in turn taken over by parliaments. Morgan notes, "Monarchy has always required close ties with divinity, which is true not only for monarchies, but for all forms of civil government. All governments, whether they acknowledge a divine component to their authority or disguise that fact under secularist language, ultimately derive their authority on religious grounds, because sovereignty and ultimacy are religious concepts and inescapably refer to God." Morgan is perceptive when he, noting the greater power of the divine right of kings in Protestant countries, links it to their rejection of the papacy as Antichrist. The way to fight divinity was with divinity. In brief, the king, not the pope, was God's lieutenant on earth. This doctrine of the divine right of kings in time became the doctrine of the divine right of Parliament, which can do no wrong, even as earlier kings could do no wrong. Popular sovereignty replaced royal sovereignty, and the civil order had a new religious orientation. In the earlier eras, Christian society had been seen as a corpus mysticum, a mystical body whose head was Christ. Then the head of society became the king, and now the state is the mystical body of the people. Whether in kings or in the people, the civil authority raised more problems than it solved. Kings were commonly much more sinners than saints. Although Charles I is given a martyr status by the Church of England, Charles lost his head because he was a thief and a liar, a man who could be depended on to be devious and dishonest, and, withal, a Pharisee of the Pharisees. Moreover, in time, with the high value placed on royal blood and royal inbreeding, kings became increasingly mentally and physically warped or deformed characters, and hardly likely to command respect on any close or distant inspection. Incestuous inbreeding was certainly a factor in the decline of monarchies. The rise of the people to sovereignty has not been a moral triumph. As with kings, as the Christian character and patina left the people, it has become apparent that they too are degenerate and cannot rule even themselves. There is, however, still another factor. The Puritan pastor and writer John Cotton held that a democracy is a contradiction in terms. If the people be governors, who shall be governed? Let us remember that a sovereign is the source, not the subject of law. Because God's law is the expression of his nature, there is a total congruity between his nature or being and his law. This is not true of men. A man may affirm the necessity for a non-discriminatory society, and yet discriminate in spite of his profession, or he may believe in love as the solution, and yet show hatred towards those who cross him or disagree with him. Man makes a dangerous sovereign, because such power and authority enable him to play God when he is only a sinful man. When men become sovereigns, they make law but exempt themselves from it. No clearer example of this can be cited than the Congress of the United States. It may favour by law a variety of labour practices, non-discriminatory human relations, and standards of accountability, while accepting itself by law from the requirements of its own laws. Congress regularly promotes the prosecution of presidential assistants for offences Congress regularly commits, but declares it is exempt from such laws totally. However worded, this constant legislative stance means that Congress claims to express and represent the sovereignty of the people, and thus to have a sovereign immunity. The matter does not stop there, however. The sovereignty of the people is a doctrine religiously believed in by countless Americans, and the same is true of Frenchmen, Spaniards, and others. Hence, as a common expression has it, I have a right to do as I please. Popular sovereignty means popular lawlessness. Over the years, in numerous instances of counselling and marital problems, I have seen this anarchic freedom claimed. A right to sexual freedom is claimed by a man or a woman and justified on the grounds that the spouse has not been deprived of anything. Or basically, the premise is simply, my will be done. Moreover, given the priority or ultimacy of the individuals, their actions are seen as immune to law, whether it be drugs, shoplifting, or some other offence. They are not to be classified as other people. The same consequences of law do not properly apply to them. Even more pervasive than specific instances of law breaking is the very general temper of lawlessness. This should not surprise us. The root of authority has been broken by man's rejection of the triune God. Since all are governors, who then shall be governed? Like the men of old, men say of Christ the King, "We will not have this man to reign over us." Luke chapter 19, verse 14. If men will not obey the triune God, why should we expect them to obey Congress or any other humanistic authority? The Civil Revolution has seized authority, sovereignty, and lawmaking from God, or so it believes. As a result, it has less and less authority and sovereignty, and its laws are more and more despised. A sure product of the Civil Revolution is judgment upon itself.